Welcome to the 2023 Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund Workshop. This has been pre-recorded for publishing on March 10th, 2023. My name is Barb Pierce. I'm DED Housing Specialist for the Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund. On behalf of the department, thank you for taking time to learn about submitting an application for the 2023 Trust Fund cycle. This recording and its slides will be kept on the Trust Fund webpage until next year's cycle begins. At the end of this presentation, there will be dates and registration links to the open office hours. The open office hours will be open to applicants who have submitted a 2023 pre-application, and they may register for any or all of the open office hours offered. This workshop will not cover information that was previously shared on the pre-application workshop. Therefore, in order to not miss out on any key information, be sure you listen to the pre-application before submitting the full application. The pre-application workshop is also posted on the Trust Fund webpage. This slide is giving a list of items that were covered in the pre-application workshop and will not be covered in this workshop. These topics are also covered in the application guidelines document itself. The 2023 Trust Fund application guidelines are specific to this cycle. Every applicant should become familiar with the guidelines and use it as their first source for locating information. When you are in the document, you can use Control F in order to search for words found within the document. This is a guidance document. It's advisory in nature, and it may be amended during the application cycle, or it may be supplemented at any time during the application cycle with the Trust Fund Questions and Answers document and other guidance that's posted on the Trust Fund webpage. Applicants should not rely on a downloaded hard copy of this guiding document, but rather check for most up-to-date version regularly throughout the application period. This document is directly referring to the 2023 Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund application cycle. The application guidelines document has a table of contents that is clickable. This means you can hover over one of the sections listed in the table of contents and click on it, and you will be taken directly to that section. This is the funding cycle timeline. You've seen this in the pre-application workshop and in the application guidelines, page 4. Just reminding you that it's here with all the deadlines and due dates that you need to know, especially the May 11th. But also remember, site review forms are due on March 23rd and rental project pro forma due on April 6th. This is just a high-level view of the typical award cycle, starting with the application deadline on May 11th. Following that, the next notice would be the notice of award. This is done through an email notification and a press release. This typically takes place in August. Around that time, then, awardees will review their contract with a DED housing representative. The performance plan will be reviewed and uploaded to the award, and both parties will need to execute the contract through the DocuSign process. As soon as both contracts are signed, the awardee will access the award in AmpliFund. Instructions will be sent to them on how to do this in the recipient portal. Following that, the special conditions phase begins. And here is when the awardee submits special conditions items. Most typically, December 31st is the due date for special conditions items to be submitted by the awardees. And then following that, all special conditions items will be reviewed by their housing program representative. And if all is approved, they will receive a release of funds letter. This typically happens in January, so January of 2024. What's most important about all this is that you need to remember that a project may not incur any costs prior to receiving that release of funds letter. And it's also important that everyone on your project team understands this typical award cycle. We do receive quite a few questions on match requirements, so even though this was covered in pre-application workshop, I'm going to cover it again here. The match is not a requirement in order to submit an application or in order to be funded. Applicants providing a match as part of their application are joining DED in the investment of resources and risk, and therefore they are awarded points for match. The applicant is the entity committing this match to the project. Now, match must be associated with a primary or support activity that is being funded by the trust fund. Match funds are unrestricted cash funds available at the time of application. And the match documentation form is required to be signed by the applicant organization and uploaded to the application in order to receive match points. This form can be downloaded from the trust fund webpage. Match funds are used to pay for project-related costs that are incurred by the awarded recipient, and they are paid for by the awarded recipient during the open contract period, but after release of funds. If the funds do not meet all the above criteria mentioned, they could still be considered leveraged funds, as long as the source is used during the open contract period. Leveraged funds are listed on a leverage table within the full application. Trust fund awards cannot be used as match for any DED-administered federal or state-funded applications. Federal and state programs, including but not limited to CDBG, Home Partnership Funds, CDBG-DR, and any state-administered programs funded with American Rescue Plan Act cannot be used as matching funds for a trust fund application. Please refer to Section 7.1 of the application guidelines for more information. The first page on both application types is the project information page. And the very first field that an applicant is asked to fill in is the application name field. Now, it is very important to follow the requested naming format that was covered in the pre-application workshop and in the application guidelines. The naming format is beneficial across several roles held by DED staff that will be working with the applications once they are submitted. And DED staff will be very grateful for every application that comes in following the naming format. I'm now going to talk about the housing development application, and I will give also a brief overview later in this workshop about the technical assistance application. And regardless of the application, I thought I would remind you that you can download the full application first thing when you're working in it. This would give you the ability to see all the questions that are coming up to be filled in. So you would have kind of a hard copy to be able to take a look at all those questions. And also just know that you can go back at any time, even when any of the pages are marked complete or saved. You can go back at any time while you're still, before submitting, to be able to edit some items in your application. And I recommend saving often, so in case it would time out on you, and I wouldn't want you to lose any information while you're working in the application. It's also really important to read all instructions that are provided right within the application. We added a lot more instructions this year right to the application. Also review all your answers before you hit submit. You could download when you have everything put in and ask a teammate or one of your board folks to just review it and read it and make sure it's making sense in all areas and is consistent. Also, there are several parts within, like part 3 is a good example where there are conditional questions and you have to be mindful to select yes or no, and the next set of questions will pop up. So watch for that. If there's an asterisk on a question, it means it has to be answered. However, if the question does not apply to your project type, you can just mark it as NA for not applicable, or you can explain why it's not applicable to your project, whichever you prefer. Section 9 of the application guidelines will be a very helpful section for you as you begin to go through your application online. Each of the sections have been detailed in the application guidelines, so please review that as you're going through your application. Be sure to read the instructions very carefully for service area, as this is found in part 1 of both applications. With the service area, you will either choose county if you are going to be serving every community in that county with this particular project, or you will choose a city or several cities that are partnering with you on this project and will be the ones served by this project. However, there is occasionally times where a project is going to serve every community in one county and only one community in another county. And in that case, you would select something in the county area and something in the city area. But typically, you're going to choose one or the other to fill out to best describe where these units are located. Please remember, you are not describing your typical whole service area for your organization, but are describing where these units, where the beneficiaries will be served within this project. Also found in part 1 is the question as to whether any of your project units are landing in an enterprise zone, opportunity zone, or designated blighted area. If you are wondering what those are or whether or not your project would be located in any of those zones, I recommend you actually contact the community in which the project will take place, because these are officially designated and they would have had to apply to become enterprise zone or opportunity zone, or they would have had to go through a legal process to designate an area of the community as blighted. And they'll have maps as to what areas any of these may apply in their community. In part 2, you'll be asked to provide a project description summary. So this is a checklist of all the items that should be included in that project description summary in order to make it a really strong one. This is a great opportunity for this high-level view to be given to those who are reviewing your application, a great understanding of it as a whole. This is also a good time for me to let you know that every question within the application, oftentimes you will see character limits. It'll say so many characters is the limit. This is a very excessive number in many cases. So do not feel that you have to make your project application even stronger by filling in all of those character limits. That is not at all what that is for. Always just answer the question before you, concise and clearly. But if there is such a case where you are going to exceed that limit, it is okay. You won't be shut down. It will work. So you can exceed it if needed, but I don't recommend exceeding it. I don't even recommend for a lot of the questions to even reach that character limit. So it's just a basic guide, and if you need to go over, you can. I think what's more important is to have clear, concise answers and answer the question at hand. Part 2 is where you will be selecting the project activities that you are requesting trust fund money to support. The activity section is divided up by project type, meaning home buyer, rental, or homeowner. The home buyer project type is the first one to appear. If the project is not a home buyer project, the last bullet in the list should be selected that says not applicable. This project is not a home buyer project. Once you select that for your first, if you select not applicable to the home buyer, then the next set of choices will come up, and that would be rental. Also, if it is not a rental, then you will select not a rental project, and the last choice will come up, which is homeowner. There's only one applicable activity for homeowners, and that's rehabilitation. After selecting the primary activity for the project, the one that best describes your project, the applicant will move on to select any support activities that they're requesting. Support activities are optional. The applicant would also go on to select any administrative activities that they are wanting to seek trust fund support for. You will select any that apply, or you can leave them unselected if you are not going to request trust fund to support. Please do not select any activities in this section that you're not going to be using trust fund to support the costs in. These activities is the guide for what trust fund will be awarding in each activity, and you will build your budget according to it as well. If you have any questions, please do reach out to your housing program representative. At the very bottom of part 2 is the alternative activity verification process. Now, if you have looked at all the activities under your specific project type and you don't feel your project quite fits, is a little different, you need to contact your housing representative and discuss this with them. Perhaps you still believe it to be an eligible activity, but it's just not quite fitting the definition. So in that case, you will discuss it with the housing representative. They might advise you to add some additional documentation in this alternative activity verification process. So they will let you know. Otherwise, you should be selecting the activity under your project type that does describe your project. This is a snapshot of part 3. It's showing you that about the program guidelines. Every housing development project will need to have program guidelines that are created specific to this 2023 cycle. In order to help you create your program guidelines, there is a checklist on the Trust Fund's website that can be downloaded. It has all the key requirements showing that need to be in your program guidelines. Please read the instructions that are right within the application itself and at section 9.2 as you complete your program guidelines and add them to the application. Within section of the program guidelines, there's some questions that are reflecting items that are on the program guidelines checklist. And that will mean that you can copy and paste from your program guidelines to answer those questions. Just make sure that you are copying and pasting only that which is needed to answer the question. This slide is just a helpful summary of projects that require a pro forma and projects that do not require pro forma. If you have any questions on whether your project does, please reach out to your housing program representative. Rental projects must use the required rental pro forma, and that must be downloaded from the trust fund website. Do not use a former year or a past year's rental pro forma. You must use the current one that is found on the trust fund website. This slide is just showing you where you can find the rental program guidelines checklist, along with the home buyer and the homeowner program guidelines checklists. But within the rental program guidelines checklist is a last page on there, and this last page actually is just listing out several items to help you understand the rental pro forma. So the titles that you are seeing, such as unit information, is actually a sheet on the rental pro forma. Development cost schedule is another sheet on the rental pro forma. And so as you look through these sheets, these different items will help you in determining if you are filling it out correctly, such as the debt service coverage ratio needs to be no less than 1.15 in the first year. Monthly or annual debt service is not a requirement with this pro forma, is something added in. Debt service payments must meet all debt service obligations, so you must maintain at least a 1.0 throughout the affordability period. So there are items like that. You need to review this when filling out your rental pro forma spreadsheet. And we will go over the rental pro forma spreadsheet in an upcoming open office hour. But in the meantime, please reach out to your housing rep if you need some clarification on anything in the rental pro forma spreadsheet. As for all the other pro formas, there is an example pro forma that can be manipulated and used for a home buyer or a purchase rehab resale project. It's found on the trust fund's webpage under application guidelines. You can take a look at that, but remember that's an example, and you're going to be needing to probably edit it and do changes to it to make it fit your unique project. And so you're responsible for all the formulas and everything working on it, but it just kind of can give you one example to use. And you can also talk to your housing program rep if you want to talk about your pro forma. So again, I just want to make sure rental pro forma spreadsheets are due by April 6th to your housing program representative. So don't forget that deadline, very important, and use the correct rental pro forma spreadsheet, which is on the trust fund website currently. An often asked question regarding rental projects is how should a project determine its rental rates? And so we've added that into this workshop as a frequently asked question. You can refer back to this one when you are filling out your rental pro forma as you're thinking through that. And if you have questions, please reach out. There are other frequently asked questions that can be found on the trust fund's webpage. Underneath the application links, there's a blue box that says 2023 NAHTF Q&A. So please click into that and scroll down. You'll see a lot of helpful frequently asked questions. We hope that you'll utilize those as you're working through your application. How to create your budget was reviewed and in the pre-application workshop on slides 53 through 56. I just wanted to point out here, though, to review section 9.9 of the application guidelines. It gives some tips for how to create your budget. I think it's important to review that, and it might be helpful when you go to creating it. And also in the open office hours, that might be something that we will sample and show you how to do that if you have not or have issues with that. The next few slides are going to be specific to the nonprofit technical assistance application. This nonprofit technical assistance application is meant to support eligible nonprofit community or neighborhood-based organizations by providing financial resources to increase an organization's capacity for creating affordable housing. A successful technical assistance project should be able to substantially increase the awardee's ability to impact affordable housing development in their service area. I'm going to start with part 2, where the nonprofit technical assistance application has all of these sections within the one part 2. There you'll be selecting project activities, any and all that apply to your project. You'll also be submitting a project description summary, basically how your project is designed to work, and this is where you will list your objectives. I've highlighted performance plan goals because the next slide I'm going to go over the performance plan goals in particular, and you can see the rest of these are sections you will be filling out. They're all very self-explanatory within the application itself. Here's an example of a goal being input into the technical assistance application. Suppose that the technical assistance goal is for staff training. You can see the estimated cost here was input at $2,750. And in the description, you are to include the activity and the funding sources. So the description would say registration, travel, and lodging for one staff member to attend the class titled Housing Development 101 in September 2023. Funding source is NAHTF. If you have other funding sources, be sure to list them. Then in the next one, it says describe typical expenses related to this goal. So the typical expenses would be the registration fee, $750, the travel, lodging, meals, supplies related to the class, around $2,000. You would just list out the typical expenses that are going to be associated with that description of that goal, and they can add up then to the estimated costs that you've put in above. After filling out the performance plan goals with their respective costs, fill in the total project cost field and the total other sources field. The total project cost field will include your trust fund request plus any other sources. And when you subtract total project cost minus the total other sources, you should be getting the trust fund amount you are requesting. The last item in your application is to create the budget for the technical assistance application. It's very simple. We want only one line item. It should say technical assistance, and you should have the amount of the award request under the grant funded column and the amount of the non-grant funded. Under the non-grant funded column is your match amount, if any. But again, this is just a formality creating the budget. Once, if awarded, this budget then seamlessly moves over into the recipient portal, and we only use a one-line item for the budget of technical assistance. Please see section 9.9 for tips on creating the budget. If you need help, reach out to your housing program representative as well. Going to start wrapping up this workshop just with some tips for your work on your application. Remember to save often so you don't lose any input due to the platform timing out. Also, watch all the workshops, attend the open office hours, review the application guidelines, and contact your housing representative if you need assistance. Some other tips for making your application stand out amongst others. The number one is follow instructions carefully. It is very obvious to reviewers when applicants have submitted without watching the workshops or following the instructions on the application itself. Review the 2023 Trust Fund Q&A. This is found on the Trust Fund's webpage. just underneath the application links. New frequently asked questions will be added regularly. Please answer every question that is pertaining to the project type you are applying for. It's recommended to use a proofreader to catch any mistakes before you submit. You can download your application at the end and print it out so someone can read it. Give consistent answers all the way through your application and give concise answers. If you have a project involving rehabilitation and you might be working on units that were built prior to 1978, then please review the lead-based paint question and answer document. It is found on the website, the Trust Fund website, under section titled Application Guidelines. And also go to the terms and definitions that are found in the appendix of the application guidelines. Be sure to mark your calendars to get your site review forms submitted to your housing program representatives before March 23rd. This is the best way to assure they can get out and view your site and be able to get it back to you in time for the full application upload. Also, if you are a rental project, be sure you have your pro forma sent in to your program housing representative by end of day on April 6th. These cannot be late. They must be submitted. They must be submitted in Excel format, and they must be the rental pro forma that is shown on the Trust Fund webpage. The current one is to be used for this cycle. The applications are due on May 11th at 5 o'clock Central Time. Please do not wait until the last day to submit if at all possible, just because there sometimes are technical difficulties and we want to have time to work through those with you. And lastly, stay informed by joining the mailing list. You can hit that link on this PowerPoint, or you can find the Join Our Mailing List at the bottom of every web page on the DED website. The department will be holding virtual open office hours. These will be focused on questions that are specific to completing the application within AmpliFund. If you have project-specific questions, those will need to be submitted either to your housing program representative or through the 2023 NAHTF Q&A form that's found on the Trust Fund webpage. The open office hours schedule will begin March 23rd and go through April 27th. They will be held on Thursdays for 1 hour from 10 a.m. Central Time to 11 a.m. Each open office hour will begin by covering a specific topic within the application, and then it will open up to questions pertaining to the application for the remainder of the time. You will be able to click on the link to go to the training page, which will have the registration links for you to sign up for the open office hours. You can attend as however many you would like. Don't forget, you can submit questions to the FAQ, and those will be posted weekly. And stay informed by joining our mailing list. Here's a slide that you might want to save somewhere close by or on your desktop that shows you how to reach out to AmpliFund customer support. You can make a phone call between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can also do an online chat by clicking into that link, or you may email them at this email. So they will get back to you, and you are welcome to CC your housing program representative if you're having an issue with the AmpliFund application and you're needing to reach out to AmpliFund customer support. So this concludes the 2023 Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund workshop for the full application. If you have questions, please do continue to reach out to your housing program representative. Also, please register for the first open office hour coming up on March 23rd. We appreciate you taking time to listen to this workshop and to take time to follow up on reading through the resources such as the application guidelines and the question and answer link that is on our trust fund webpage. We think all of those will be very helpful to you. Thank you for your patience as you await a return phone call or email from the staff, as they are working through a lot of applications during this time, and they will do their best to get back to you to answer your questions. Thank you.